I love reading books in translation. I already see books as such an amazing way to travel into so many different people's lives, but when you add books from different languages into that, it just expands indefinitely. Suddenly you're able to travel to so many different countries all over the world, dive into different cultures. I absolutely love it, and I'm so grateful for the amazing translators who make it possible for me to read these books. And so in this video, I'm going to recommend some fantastic books that have been translated into English from other languages. Firstly, a book that was translated from Japanese is The Guest Cat by Takashi Hiraide, translated by Eric Selland. So Takashi Hiraide is a poet, and The Guest Cat is about a couple in their 30s living in Tokyo who work from home together, and they've kind of just run out of things to say to each other. But one day, a cat starts showing up each day in their kitchen, and they start caring for it and buying it treats, and this gives them something new to talk about. So this cat kind of brings a lot of colour back into their lives. But the book is very descriptive. It is not a fast-paced plot. It's more of a meditation on life and its ephemeral nature. You can really tell it was written by a poet. And then a book translated from French that I absolutely loved was The Braid by Letitia Colombani, translated by Louise Rogers Lalaurie. So this is about three women living very different lives in different countries. So we have one woman in India who is from a very low caste and is dreaming of how she can find a better life for her daughter. Then we have a young woman living in Sicily working at her father's wig factory. And finally, we have a woman in Canada who is this high-powered lawyer who's just been diagnosed with cancer. And so all of these women are linked together by the theme of hair, which travels between all three of them. And their stories are literally braided together. It's absolutely beautiful. And then another book translated from French, but this time from Morocco, is The Happy Marriage by Tahar Ben Jaloun and translated by Andre Nafis Sahili. So this is a really interesting story about a marriage, but told from first the husband's perspective and then the wife's perspective. And the book is set in Casablanca just before legal reform in Morocco is about to change women's rights dramatically. And the husband in this story was a painter who was at the height of his career when he was paralysed from a stroke and is now trapped in this rather destructive marriage. And so he finds escape by writing a book about his unhappy marriage. When the wife finds the book, she retaliates with a book of her own, and suddenly we see all of the events from the first half of the book completely reinterpreted. So the book shines a light on this marriage and this couple who thought that they had a really modern relationship, finding that maybe they're not quite as enlightened as they thought they were. And the book translated from Italian is The Puranas by Roberto Saviano and translated by Anthony Sugar. So this is a rather dark, violent book about gang warfare in Naples, but it's about these gangs made up of teenage boys. So we see these young lives being ruined by being dragged into this kind of power struggle. So our main character is a teenage boy called Nicolas, who is the leader of one of these gangs, and he is known both to his friends and enemies as the Maharaja. So he has become already so desensitized to wielding so much violence. But as the book goes on, we see it all start to slip out of his control with pretty tragic consequences. And then for a book translated from Swedish, I have of course picked a thriller. I feel like Swedish crime and thriller books are so popular. So I want to recommend A Nearly Normal Family by M.T. Edvardsen. So this one was translated by Rachel Wilson Broyles, and it tells the story of a seemingly normal family, except the teenage daughter has just been accused of a murder. So the story is told from all the perspectives of the people in the family. We hear from the father, the teenage girl herself, and the mother. And each time we switch perspective, we get the events reinterpreted all over again. So that structure works really well here to just keep you guessing literally right up till the last page. For a book translated from German, I've picked one from an Austrian author. This is A Whole Life by Robert Seethaler and translated by Charlotte Collins. So as you might guess from the title, this is the story of this guy's whole life. So our main character is called Andreas Egger, and he has lived his whole life in this really remote alpine village. And he has these two eventful memories in his life, and in between that, these long, quiet, uneventful years. And the book reminded me quite a lot of Stoner by John Williams, in that it's about finding the meaning in this rather quiet life that doesn't have any of the measures of success that we usually put value on. But in A Whole Life, you also get this amazing backdrop where the world is changing so much, new technologies and industries springing up all the time, but Andreas's relationship with the ancient landscape where he lives remaining the one constant. Next, a book translated from Farsi, The Enlightenment of the Green Gage Tree by Shakoufe Eza, and translated anonymously. So this book is set in Iran right after the Islamic Revolution, and it borrows a lot from classic Persian storytelling. It's very lyrical and it uses these elements of magical realism to dive into the story of a family swept up in the chaos of this revolution that swept across an ancient land and community. And the book is actually narrated by the ghost of a 13-year-old girl, and it's very powerful. This book has been shortlisted for the International Booker Prize this year. For a book translated from Spanish, you should read Homeland by Fernando Aramburu and translated by Alfred McAdam. And this is the story of these two women who have been friends their whole life, growing up in this small town in northern Spain. And even when the ETA first starts posing a terrorist threat, these two women, who've never taken much interest in politics in their lives, just don't think that it affects them. Until one of their husbands starts receiving threatening letters from this group and the other woman's son is recruited by them. So suddenly they find themselves torn apart and the book races on towards this tragic ending. So this book is about loyalty and friendship and family, but it's also about exploring the story of the ETA and on a larger scale what it's like to live in the shadow of terrorism. And then another book translated from Spanish but from South America is Little Eyes by Samantha Schweblin, translated by Megan McDowell. So this is a really Black Mirror-esque book. It's about these little toys called Kentuckys that in the novel have become really popular all over the world. So these little toys with cameras for eyes and wheels for feet, and any random person from somewhere else in the world can control them. They can see through the camera into your home and wheel the toy around to see what you're up to. So it sounds super weird, but in the book you really can see how they catch on. It plays to that same part of us that likes reality TV or likes talking to random people on social media. The toys are supposed to reveal the beauty of connection between random strangers all around the globe. And good things do happen in the book. So someone actually saves somebody's life by watching them through the Kentucky. But of course, there's a dark side, and these little toys just pave the way for something much more terrifying. Next, for a book translated from Bengali, Abandon, by Sangeeta Bandyopadhyay, translated by Arunava Sinha. So this author has been described as India's Elena Ferrante in the way that she talks about womanhood. So this is about an artist called Ishwari who is really struggling with the way that for her identity as an artist clashes with her identity as a mother, to the extent that she had previously abandoned her son. But they're now reunited, and the book follows them trying to rebuild this relationship while also following Ishwari's struggle with what she feels as this burden of motherhood that's taking away from her identity as an artist, but also balancing that with the fact that she does absolutely love her son. And she even divides up her identity, using I when she's talking about herself, the artist, and Ishwari when she's talking about herself, the mother. It is really powerful stuff. And finally, why not read a book translated from an ancient language? So the Odyssey by Homer has been translated multiple times, but the Macmillan Collector's Library edition was translated by T.E. Lawrence, i.e. Lawrence of Arabia. So the Odyssey is the epic story of Odysseus and his 10-year journey home after the Trojan War. And there are so many great stories in here. So he meets Circe, the witch who turns his men into pigs, and who you may well know and love from the Madeline Miller book Circe. He meets a one-eyed Cyclops who tries to eat him, but Odysseus has a very clever plan to escape. He meets sirens and nymphs. He avoids whirlpools and six-headed monsters. It's one of the greatest adventure stories of all time, to be honest. So just look at how many amazing stories open up to you when you're able to read books from other languages, and I would love to know some of your favourites. There are loads more exciting translated books coming out later in the year, so also let us know in the comments if you'd like us to do another of these videos later on. And we also have a whole playlist of book recommendations that have allowed us to travel around the globe. So if you want to read something that lets you virtually travel to different countries from the comfort of your own room, do have a browse through these videos. See you next time!